This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community. This one comes from Clane Fahey. And Clane asks, is there something intrinsic to the apparently better ability of the right wing to get itself organized for maximum political effectiveness compared to the left, which seems to have terrible problems organizing itself in order to achieve its political objectives and goals? I love this question. I think it is very, very important. I've thought a lot about it, and I want to offer you an explanation. Let me begin by agreeing with the premise. It does seem to me, and of course, I'm reflecting American politics right now that I'm always a part of, that the right is much better organized, much more clearly aware of its own coalitions, how to preserve them, how to shore them up, how to control them so that you hold the right wing together to get at least more of its objectives than they could get if they weren't well organized, if they didn't have an effective coalition, etc. They have their stresses, their strains, and their divisions, for sure. But they manage to mobilize and organize despite them. And the left has on occasion been able to do that too. Best example would be the Great Depression of the 1930s, when the ability of the various strains of the left, the exploding labor movement, the CIO, two socialist parties, a communist party, and all kinds of progressive social movements, were remarkably able to get together in what ended up being called the New Deal coalition and pushing through some of the most profound economic changes this country has ever seen. The whole 20th century of American economic history is really about the build-up to the explosion of the Great Depression by a disorganized and rapacious capitalist growth story, blowing up, as they typically do, in a Great Depression, having a massive left-wing surge of politics in the Great Depression, producing a set of new developments, taxing corporations and the rich, which we did, setting up a whole social security system, which is a socialization of pensions, which we did, providing unemployment compensation, the first minimum wage, a federal jobs program. We did extraordinary things when we were unified. CIO, two socialist parties, the American Communist Party, and many progressive social movements got together, were well organized, and the rest of the 20th century is the attempt to undo all they achieved, which required the right wing to get its act together, which it did. So this ebbs and flows, but Clane Fahey's question remains right on target. Most of the time, and certainly over the last 30 to 40 years, the right has done a better job of organizing its complex coalition than the left has. And here's my explanation of why this tends to be the case with important and achievable alternatives where the left is organized. But here's the basic reason. The capitalist economic system organizes the production of goods and services in a very organized way and in a very particular organization. And my thesis is simple. Something as fundamental as producing the goods and services without which modern life isn't possible is going to be a model for, is going to influence how we organize everything else. And now let's see. One class of people in capitalism, the capitalists, are very small. They own and control the enterprises that produce the goods and services. And they preside over a very large group of people, the employees. Therefore, the success of any enterprise has long ago impressed itself on the minority who own it by teaching them You're a minority. You need the majority to work, otherwise you don't get any profits. So you better control them, monitor them, shape them, influence them, educate them so they fit. Organize a hierarchy, you at the top, managers in between, supervisors, 4 men and 4 women, and then the mass of employees at the bottom. Have the chain of command tightly woven, have it monitored. In other words, the employer class is highly organized from the beginning, and the workers have nothing comparable. They're not in charge. They are kept from being in charge. They don't have the structural pressures to organize themselves. That's left to somebody else. Who organizes the shop floor? The employer and his/her designates. Who organizes literally when you come, when you go to the bathroom, what the bathroom looks like, when you come back? What Everything is organized by somebody else. Therefore, self-organization becomes difficult, something you're not accustomed to, something you haven't learned over time, unless the working class and the employees join organizations and learn all the needs and skills of doing things in an organized way. And the labor movement, the organized labor movement, the union movement has been the single most important school, which is why it had to be destroyed as part of the rollback of the New Deal. In 1950, a third of American workers were members of unions. Today, 10%. That's the story of the dismantling of the organization of the workplace, and that has leached out and become the difficulty of the organization of all the left, of all the efforts to do better and go beyond capitalism. That doesn't mean we can't organize the left. We've done that before, we can do it again. But it means facing the reality I've just tried to summarize as the way to move forward and not be hamstrung politically by that historical residue in which the capitalist economic system organizes the rest of society, including disorganizing the mass of people in order to keep its control. If discussions like this strike you as a worthwhile contribution to the political conversation of this country and of this planet, please partner with us. We ask that at the end of each of these small, short videos, share this with other people. That's why we produce it. Help us reach more, influence more. You can do that by sharing these products and everything else we produce that you can access for free on our website, democracyatwork.info. That's why we maintain it, for your partnership, so we can all have the maximum reach and impact that's possible. And of course, if you can help us financially, well, then understand we have a team of people who earn their living working with me. I take no money from Democracy at Work, absolutely nothing, zero. I don't need it, I'm lucky. I have a pension that comes from being a professor all my life. And I use that to make these tasks possible. I love teaching. I loved it when I was a teacher full time, and I love doing it now with these videos. Work with us. We need you, and I think you can help yourself as well as us by partnering. Thank you for your attention.